They control 1 in every 4 pesos spent by Filipinos, and they've managed to stay completely out of the spotlight until now. When you think of the great fortunes of the Philippines, names like CI, Ayala, and Lopez immediately come to mind, don't they? These are families who built their empires right out in the open for everyone to see. But what if I told you that some of the deepest, most enduring roots of wealth in the Philippines actually lie in a secret history? A fascinating story of pioneers and magnates who arrived on these shores centuries ago, quietly building fortunes that would profoundly shape the nation, all while hiding in plain sight. This isn't just a tale of old money. It's the story of the secret billionaires you've probably never heard of, and the powerful historical forces that brought them here, shaping their legacy of discretion. Imagine this. It's 1870, and 3 brothers step off a steamship into the bustling port of Manila Bay. What did they carry? Not trunks overflowing with gold, but rather carefully packed Alsatian watches and a single cryptic instruction from their father: never speak of where you come from. These were the Levy brothers, Leopold, Ludwig, and Leon, Sephardic Jews who had, for generations, survived the brutal Spanish Inquisition by cleverly pretending to be Catholic merchants. When opportunities for prosperity finally dried up in a changing Europe, they looked eastward, toward Spain's farthest and most promising colony. Manila back then was still a city walled off from the outside world, a colonial relic. Yet its port was wide open, a gateway to new possibilities. Incredibly, within just a year, these enterprising brothers had opened La Estrella del Norte on Escolta, which was for its time the 5th Avenue of Manila. They sold exquisite jewelry, yes, but they also introduced Filipinos to the very first imported bicycles, the revolutionary Kodak cameras, and, because Leon had actually trained as a chemist, the first aspirin tablets the islands had ever seen. By 1890, their meticulously kept ledger books revealed they were clearing what would, in today's money, amount to just under $2 million a month. Think about that for a second. And they did it all so quietly. No flashy mansions to draw attention, no ostentatious displays of wealth. Instead, they shared a discreet warehouse in Binondo, its attic serving dual purposes as both their office and their synagogue. When the Philippine Revolution erupted, the brothers didn't hesitate. They covertly financed ammunition for Emilio Aguinaldo's troops. In a gesture of profound gratitude, the general later granted them extensive timber rights in Mindanao. These rights, incredibly, are still held by their descendants today, woven into a complex web of holding companies, quietly generating wealth away from public scrutiny. It's a testament to their foresight and the enduring power of quiet influence. Fast forward a few decades to 1921. The American flag now proudly flies over Manila, signaling a new era. And with it, another Jewish family sails in: the Frieders. Unlike the Levies, they weren't fleeing immediate persecution just yet. They were chasing a different kind of fortune: tobacco. Cincinnati had the taste for fine cigars, and Manila had the perfect leaf. Within months, their Helena cigar factory on Calle San Juan was rolling out 10,000 stogies a day. That's a lot of cigars. But the Frieders did something the Levies never quite dared to do. They went public with their identity. They courageously formed the Jewish Refugee Committee of Manila. As Hitler's menacing shadow stretched across Europe, they transformed their considerable profits into precious passports. Between 1937 and 1941, they personally sponsored 1,200 refugees, a diverse group of doctors, dentists, and toolmakers, each one carefully vetted for skills the islands desperately needed. President Quezon's government, recognizing the value of this infusion of talent, generously donated Marikina land. The Frieders, in turn, paid for their passage. It was an incredible act of humanitarianism and strategic nation-building. This infusion of talent wasn't just charity, it was an economic shot in the arm for the entire nation. Refugee physicians opened the very first radiology clinic, bringing cutting-edge medical technology to the Philippines. Viennese chemists formulated the local version of penicillin, a medical breakthrough for the region. And one ingenious Berlin machinist started a precision parts shop that would later supply critical landing gear assemblies to Clark Air Base. None of these ventures necessarily made the Frieders headline billionaires in the traditional sense, but they ingeniously locked their family into the vital supply chains of a nation preparing for war, and, crucially, for its eventual reconstruction. Their legacy wasn't just in cigars, but in the very fabric of a modernizing Philippines.
While the Frieders were rolling their cigars, a Bavarian named Emil Bachrach arrived with a completely different kind of currency: trust. Bachrach had honed his skills managing a regional bank in Shanghai and shrewdly saw Manila as the next great sponge for Pacific capital. In 1923, he opened Bachrach & Co., essentially establishing the first true investment house in the islands. He underwrote expansions for burgeoning sugar mills, financed the tramway line that, in some form, still runs from Binondo to Cavite, and quietly, brilliantly, bought up distressed Spanish-era land titles at courthouse auctions, often for a song. But Bachrach also wrote checks for something far more intangible, a profound sense of belonging. He generously funded Temple Emil on Taft Avenue, creating the first permanent synagogue south of Shanghai. Membership dues weren't just for spiritual comfort. They were, in essence, networking luncheons before networking was even a word. Picture this: German chemical engineers, American mining engineers, and prominent Filipino ilustrados exchanging business cards and ideas over challah bread. Deals were sealed, partnerships forged, and futures mapped out long before the dessert wine was even poured. It was a powerful nexus of commerce and community. By 1936, Bachrach's personal balance sheet, meticulously archived at the American Historical Collection, listed real estate holdings whose book value alone would equal roughly $280 million today. Yet, despite this enormous wealth, he lived in a modest two-story house on Kansas Street, drove his own DeSoto, and insisted his children attend public schools. The fortune, built on quiet foresight and strategic investments, compounded silently, routed through trust funds in New York and later reinvested into the post-war Philippine textile mills. It's a classic example of wealth built and preserved with extraordinary discretion. December 1941 changed everything, didn't it? The Japanese troops swept in, seizing Jewish-owned factories under the flimsy, cruel fiction that they were enemy property. The bustling Levy warehouse on Calle Rosario was transformed into a rice depot. The Elena cigar factory was shuttered, its machines silent, and Temple Emil, that vibrant hub of community and commerce, was tragically converted into a horse stable. Families scattered, their lives upended. Some sought refuge in the mountains of Cebu, others endured the horrors of prison camps in Laguna. It was a time of unimaginable loss and hardship. But war also teaches the most profound lessons in concealment. Survivors learned to hold their precious assets not in their own names, which were now targets, but in the names of trusted Filipino friends, loyal employees, or even distant relatives. After liberation, when U.S. indemnification checks finally began to arrive, most families didn't flaunt their newfound liquidity. Instead, they cannily funneled the cash into shell companies discreetly registered in the newly independent Manila. This was how the concept of hidden billions truly began to take shape, less out of a grand conspiracy and more out of sheer, desperate survival. It was a pragmatic response to an existential threat. By the 1950s, these same families, having weathered the storm, re-entered commerce with seemingly clean slates and, crucially, even cleaner balance sheets. They owned shares, though often not in their own names, in the country's first cement plant, its first airline catering service, and even its first duty-free shop. Newspapers of the era celebrated the visible entrepreneurs of the post-war boom without ever noticing the silent,
often anonymous partners pulling strings behind the scenes. The art of invisibility had been perfected. So, if this wealth is so significant, where are these families now? If you pick up Forbes Philippines 2025, you'll see the usual roster of tycoons: Sai, Villar, Razan. But you won't find a single surname that explicitly telegraphs Jewish ancestry. Does that mean the money simply vanished into thin air? Absolutely not. It simply matured, diversified, and became even more deeply embedded in sophisticated, multi-layered portfolios. Take this example: the holding company that now owns the country's second-largest cold storage chain. Its origins can be traced back through intricate layers of offshore trusts and private foundations to BlackRock's great-granddaughter. She's not just managing a cold storage empire, she also sits on the board of a prominent renewable energy trust that's building vast solar farms in Iloilo. Her cousin, meanwhile, chairs a dynamic fintech startup that's revolutionizing microloans for countless sari-sari stores across the archipelago. And where did its seed capital come from? From the quiet sale of pre-war Escolta real estate, properties that had been discreetly held for over 70 years, appreciating silently in value. Here's another thread. The Levy descendants never bothered to rebuild La Estrella del Norte, their original department store, but they shrewdly retained the mineral rights in Surigao. When nickel prices soared globally in 2022, those rights were leased to a publicly listed conglomerate in exchange for royalty streams. On paper, these streams might look like small, almost insignificant footnotes in a financial report, yet they amount to roughly $12 million a year. Multiply such footnotes across several families, across diverse industries, and you begin to see the vast submerged outline of a truly colossal fortune. It's a wealth that operates below the surface, but its impact is undeniable. Three powerful interconnected forces conspire to keep these families invisible. First, there are the family compacts, often written in the 1950s, which mandate a radical form of equalization. No single heir, no matter how ambitious, can hold more than 5% of any operating company. This brilliant strategy disperses ownership into dozens of cousins, whose surnames have, over generations, married into mainstream Filipino families. It's a deliberate fragmentation that makes tracking ownership nearly impossible for outsiders. Second, the Philippine tax code, perhaps unintentionally, heavily rewards privacy. By channeling dividends through holding companies domiciled in places like the British Virgin Islands and then back into Philippine-domiciled unit investment trust funds, these families can legally avoid public disclosure thresholds. It's a sophisticated financial ballet that keeps their true wealth opaque, operating within the letter of the law, yet far from public scrutiny. And third, there's the subtle, yet incredibly effective power of cultural camouflage. After 3 generations, most descendants speak Tagalog as their first language, reserving Hebrew only for snippets during Passover. They join the same exclusive golf clubs, support the same prominent charities, and carry the same passports as everyone else. In a country where mestizo Chinese or Spanish ancestry often dominates the elite narrative, a Jewish bloodline simply blends in, becoming another thread in the rich tapestry of Filipino identity. They are in essence perfectly integrated. But even hidden money leaves telltale fingerprints if you know exactly where to look. Take the annual Mitzvah Walk in Bonifacio Global City, for instance. It raises significant funds for public school classrooms. And each pavilion, you'll notice, is anonymously underwritten by the same cluster of foundations. Then there's the neonatal ward in a prominent Quezon City hospital. It proudly bears the name Helena Wing, a quiet, poignant nod to the Frieder cigar fortune that helped build it. And consider the country's sole Holocaust Memorial Library, tucked away inside the University of the Philippines. It receives an endowment that precisely matches the interest on a $2 million bond, the price and date of which coincide perfectly with the liquidation of Temple Emil's original land sale. These philanthropic giveaways are never large enough to grab national headlines or merit a splashy newspaper feature. They are deliberately kept modest. But for those who understand the history, they map out like careful breadcrumbs, leading back to families who consistently prefer remembrance to public recognition. It's a powerful statement, made in quiet, impactful ways. So are there secret Jewish billionaires in the Philippines? The answer, surprisingly, is both yes and no. Yes, these fortunes absolutely exist. They're intergenerational, incredibly diversified, and constantly compounding. No, they do not appear on glossy magazine covers or top 10 lists because they have meticulously turned discretion into the ultimate family business. Their wealth isn't about public recognition, it's about enduring legacy. Their deep-seated secrecy was forged first by the desperate need for survival during the Inquisition era, then reinforced by the brutal wartime occupation, and finally calcified by a post-war tax code that, by its design, rewards opacity. What began as a vital act of self-preservation slowly, deliberately calcified into a brilliant, long-term strategy. In a nation famous for its flamboyant tycoons and their public displays of wealth, these families have quietly, powerfully proven that silence can indeed be the loudest, most enduring asset of all. From a candlelit warehouse synagogue on Escolta to the sleek interfaces of algorithm-driven lending apps, the arc of Jewish wealth in the Philippines is less a single monolithic dynasty and more a beautifully braided rope. Each strand represents a family that arrived at different ports, survived different storms, and crucially, tied their futures inextricably to the destiny of this archipelago. They never sought to be the richest names in Forbes, only the richest in generations yet unborn. Their ambition was for continuity, not applause.
In a world obsessed with loud, attention-grabbing billionaires, some families have masterfully turned silence into their greatest, most powerful asset. So the next time you walk past a century-old building or casually swipe to use a loan app on your phone, just pause for a second. Take a moment to consider, because beneath the surface of everyday transactions, there lies a ledger written in invisible ink. And now, you've just read a few of its most fascinating lines. If this story changed how you see Philippine money, give the video a thumbs up, share it with a history buff, and subscribe for more hidden histories that textbooks consistently left out. Because the past is never truly past. It's just patiently waiting for someone to finally tally the totals.